Hello and welcome back to STEMinist Stories. Today, I have the honor of speaking to Miss Jaya Ramachandani. She's a STEM educator and currently based in Wales, with a background that spans science, teaching, and international education. After studying physics and computer science, she went on to complete her master's degree focused on astronomy and science based business. She's taught physics across different countries and curricula, working closely with students at the IB and IGCSE level. Known for her thoughtful, inquiry driven approach to teaching, she's deeply invested in making science more accessible and engaging. To start us off, I'd like to ask what first drew you to science and how did that interest develop and move into teaching in the STEM field?
Yeah, I think what drew me to it, if I have to think about some roots, I would say my dad in Liberia and West Africa had an electronics showroom. And quite often I would go and sit there in the back where they would do a lot of the repair work. And I don't know, I had an early fascination for electronics. In school, the kinds of activities I enjoyed was, when right from collecting leaves and drawing them out to kind of doing more experimental work, any opportunity to break things apart. In our free time, like we'd get together in the building and we'd kind of like try to build stuff. I think those are my like super early experiences.
Yeah.
From there on, I think now there is more career guidance as a field also in India. So I graduated in 1997 from school. And that time there was limited. So it kind of like depended on what you know from your family sphere.
Yeah.
And like computer science was an option and physics was an option. I didn't get into the computer science college I applied for, which was Ferguson in Pune. And I kind of like defaulted to physics, but I liked both. And
Hmm.
then within physics, the kind of topic I was most interested in was astronomy and astrophysics and learning about the universe. So already, like while doing my bachelor's in physics, the University of Mumbai, they have this program called the Program for Extramural Studies, where they kind of give you opportunities to study things that are outside the program. So it could be horticulture, it could be astronomy. And I had already kind of like enrolled into that program. So I knew that's something I wanted to like know more about.
Yeah.
And transition into teaching is a very long one. Uh, um, I think after my bachelor's, which I did in physics, I wanted to first work before picking a master's because I just wanted more clarity on, what I want to do. And I got into kind of a field called academic editing and publishing. And it was a company called Cactus Communications and then another company called Crimson Interactive. They are both in North Mumbai.
Mm.
And they basically had this idea to edit research papers by Japanese scientists. So one of the founders had gone to Japan and somebody asked him to kind of like a scientist asked him to look at his research paper. And the brothers kind of converted this into a business opportunity in India. So that was like a really, really nice kind of like start to my career. I would say I really enjoyed the industry of academic editing and publishing because basically what you're doing is you're reading pretty much cutting edge research across all STEM fields for a really like I think the first kind of 6 years of my life. I also got to kind of manage a team and manage a team of like 30 people, also kind of got to build the company because the second company, Crimson Interactive, was a startup company.
Yeah.
Um, and that career, while I like really liked it, I I already kind of started feeling that I want to do something a little bit more kind of, I would say, impactful because, growing up in Mumbai, you see like so many kind of problems around you and you want to try to figure out what do you do about them. So education was kind of like a narrative that was sown as at an early age in terms of, how they say that education is the way to change the next generation. That's the basic idea. So I knew I wanted to kind of leave the academic editing industry and move into education. But I didn't know really, like at that time, there was a lot of education and multimedia coming up. So now we are talking kind of like 2009. I found that really interesting, like trying to make science more accessible through multimedia. So those were a bunch of degrees I was looking at. And then there was also this astronomy like seed at the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, I can do the education and multimedia thing through an organization. I can get a job somewhere and I can learn on the job. But I can't learn about the universe through an organization. That's better to do through a university. So
Mm,
I picked to do this master's in astrophysics
mm,
in Leiden University. And kind of from there, my career went into science communication. So you'd think science publication to science communication. I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of informal learning.
mm,
So, kind of doing camps, doing big events, doing some festivals. And
mm.
then my wife, who's a teacher, she's been like a physical education teacher for maybe now 17 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
she kind of sowed the seed that maybe you should like try to see the formal side. And I said, okay. And then I did a teaching degree, and this is the path since then. So long, winding, many changes, many shifts.
But that's what makes shared your whole life so rich, because you've
Yeah.
seen so many different aspects of the same field and gone so many different routes. I thought it was like, I think it's really cool to take
Yeah.
different routes in one field or even in different
Yeah,
fields.
and possible, right? It's
Yeah,
possible.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what a
Yeah.
lot of people like, I think should hear. Um,
Yeah.
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 Just like, I mean, backpacking off that, you talked about what kind of activity sparked your interest. I wanted to ask you, who were your pillars of support and like your strongest, like your torchbearers throughout your journey?
Yeah. I would say kind of like I've been lucky enough in my life. I have really like supportive parents. So in terms of they had, or my mom, she kind of like was also a teacher. And she believed a little bit in the Montessori philosophy and kind of like the whole let us decide what we want for ourselves. So I think that was kind of very instrumental in my particular journey, if I like compare myself to my peers, because quite early on, I never had any mental barriers around I should do this or I should do that, but I was always kind of encouraged to kind of explore what I want to do. So I'm quite a trial and error kind of person. I have quite a like a learning approach in terms of I try something and then I reflect on it, and then I try something and then I reflect on it, and I base my future decisions on the feedback from that thing that I try. And I'd also say there were like two teachers. They were a husband and wife pair, one in Jai Hind College where I did my 11 and 12, and then in Xavier's where I did my bachelor's in physics. And I had the wife, Mrs. Mistry, in my 11 and 12, and I had Mr. Mistry in
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was quite interesting. And I think like they both had quite also a gentle style of teaching in terms of they were very approachable people. So you could also learn from them in the class. And I think that time physics education was a little bit more lecture style because also of the size of the class.
Yeah.
I I understand that now as a teacher, you got to default to certain styles depending on the infrastructure around you. But you could always speak to them after. They were very open to any kind of like questions or any kinds of interactions after. Then also there were like just general role models. I think we had already access to the internet since 1999, so I could already read stories of like women scientists online. I particularly like the stories of like Marie Curie, and I also like the story of not a woman scientist but Nikola Tesla. I thought that was a really like fantastical kind of expression of what science can be. As I grew older, I would say I've been really supported by most of my bosses. They've always given me opportunities and chances to kind of like express myself. That's been important to me. That's who I'd like to list for now. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like especially the teachers, the like being approachable is one of the biggest like things I see in my teachers is like they make the best teachers, whoever I can go to after school for even sometimes with like other subjects I go to certain teachers who are like they help me out. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was nice to
Yeah.
hear.
And I think I'd like to make one more mention. Like when I was doing my master's in astronomy, I did a double master. So I did a master's in astronomy and science-based business because I'm coming from this academic editing kind of like background. And I was quite interested in that science-based business part was about inside a research university, you make some developments. So, say, for example, if you're working on some meta materials and you make some breakthroughs in how graphite can conduct electricity, let's say, for example, then it's business that kind of scales that.
Yeah.
And this kind of field was all about the interaction between the university and society. And out there, I had a supervisor in the science-based business part of my master's, and he kind of inculcated a lot of like really interesting values. So his name is Pedro Russo, and he was very much, or he is very much an open science, so kind of introducing me to concepts of Creative Commons, introducing me to different ideas of how research partnerships can happen and how data can be kind of like open sourced. So I would say those are also some values that I'm applying till date, things that have kind of stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that master's program, another thing was like, because this is a STEMinist. My particular, on the astronomy side, my supervisor was a woman, and Evina Disuk. And it was interesting because if I compare physics and astronomy was basically about this. Leiden University in the Netherlands is a research university, which means there are about 200 PhD people doing their PhD and about 20 master students. So we're kind of like the little minority compared to this
Yeah.
research kind of engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in astronomy, you would have kind of 40% women, 60% men at the time. And in physics, it was like 80% men and 20% women. Very different vibes. But despite being so many women in astronomy, they were mostly at the bottom. It was not the women rising up the pyramid of, you have a pyramid in research of you're starting with your PhD, then you're doing a postdoc, then you get to be an associate professor, then you get to be a professor. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And the people moving up the pyramid were mostly men. So it was interesting because she was, I think, one of two women who were at the top of the pyramid. So I would say that also had a bit of not an indirect impact on my life. Yeah.
Yeah, must have been inspiring to see someone like that. Like, I mean, it's a possibility. These shows.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also what it takes,
Yeah,
like what it take to be competitive in that kind of an environment.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you why business? I know you said that like taking the concept and scaling it is what the business side of like your degree actually did. But how did you come to choose business and
I'm
do it
Sindhi.
along with, huh?
I'm Sindhi. So that's why it's like
Fair enough.
there are more people in my family in business than in employment. So employment is the minor and business is the major. So uh Yeah,
Okay, that's fair enough on
that's
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so did you always imagine yourself teaching? Like,
No,
no, never. Like
not
when
never.
did it kind of feel like this is this is what your path would look like? Or this is where like you realize you wanted to do this?
Mm, I don't think I realized I wanted to do this. I tried it out.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
it made kind of sense in terms of the I realized I wanted to work in education.
Yeah.
Um, More and more I understand, what it actually takes to change policy and to change systems and to change structures. And the point that kind of I agreed to was before kind of working on the design side or on the policy side, it's better to step into education. So you have practical experience of what is a teaching job like.
Yeah.
So before kind of like thinking about, doing any larger thinking work, thinking about the structures live in a structure. And that's the kind of point that I was sold at. And now it's been 6 years of living inside the structure.
Yeah.
So I have a view now that I did not have before and that I appreciate. But it took me a long time to kind of identify as a teacher. I still don't identify as a teacher. I rather like just identify as an educator, a broader term. And then I can do different things within that broader term of education. I can develop curriculum, I can make an assessment framework, I can teach, I can coach, depending on what's the need of the hour.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds, I mean, it sounds nice to be able to do so many things without having like one constraining label.
Yeah, and that's hard. Like, I think that if I have to, and because I teach your age right now,
Yeah.
and it is a journey because my learning it is not so easy to, until you reach a certain level, it is not easy to convince people that your skills are transferable. Like, even if I have transferable skills, so say, for example, I led a team of 30 people and had kind of business targets and raised money for festivals and have done like a lot of like leadership oriented work. If I switch system, unless you are already coming in at a very high level, everybody wants you to do the route.
Yeah.
So that is a bit of kind of like when you're shifting kind of from one vertical to another vertical system, you have to navigate how you are shifting.
So you've also taught in like many countries, I believe, right? And
Yeah.
different curricula. So how has that like shaped your perspective of STEM education and like just in general, has it made any like impact on you in different environments that you're in?
Yeah. I think shifting countries. So we lived in Japan. And in Japan, the grade 10 was mixed, but I had kind of freedom to design what the math curriculum would look like in grade 10, and I made it quite project based.
Mm.
And 11 and 12 was IB. Then in New York, 9 and 10 was NGSS science. So it's called Next Generation Science Standards. And I really like that the most in terms of an approach to teaching science. And then 11 and 12 was IB. And here it's only IB. And I also teach another subject called Systems Transformation Pathway because I've been on the interdisciplinary harp, playing the interdisciplinary harp for a very long time. My festivals were interdisciplinary festivals, trying to get different kind of like silos together. And I would say the thing I've noticed most about different countries is the value system of the people shape the value system of the education. So that is number one. So say, for example, in I'm teaching IB here in Wales. Like it's also a similar kind of school, the United World College, UWC Wales, UWC Japan. But in Japan, the society as a whole has a very high kind of awareness of others. So the way they kind of like organize themselves and organize the administration and organize the program kind of get rooted inside the values of that society. Yeah. And like I said that I really liked that NGSS, which
Yeah.
was in in New York. And what they're kind of like trying to do with these next generation science standards is essentially make more things rubric based and less things exam based.
Hmm.
That
Okay.
makes sense to you, right? So
Somewhat.
like
Yeah.
yeah, when teaching science, we had kind of like four standards. The first one was four big kind of categories. The first one was around like research design and designing an experiment. So the whole idea of asking a research question and then how do you go about gathering evidence for it? What kind of procedure makes a valid and reliable procedure?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the next skill was on data analysis. Once you've got your data, kind of like what are you doing with your data? The third one was on mathematical problem solving. So this is kind of like a conventional skill. You're given information and you need to kind of rearrange the information in different ways to reach a solution. And the fourth skill was evaluation. So having that critical eye over both your problem solving technique, your research design technique, your data analysis methods, and that's what it's kind of training you to do. So that kind of like a framework, I would say, gave a lot of room to teachers to also be creative. Versus, like, say, in the IB structure, you've got a whole lot of content to go through within certain amount of time. So actually, that doesn't give me any creative powers as a teacher. I just have to go boom, 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 boom. While there, I can like design more, think more, engage with my students more, and make it a bit slow or fast, depending on what I want or what the school wants, in a way.
Yeah.
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 So I would say that kind of a system is born from America, you
Yeah.
know? While what I'm noticing here in Britain is they really love the rules. They love it. Like, I don't know why they love it, but they love the rules. And it's also interesting for me because when I took this job, I said I want to go and see the belly of the beast, you know? And I can make a lot of connections to the inheritance of our Indian education system from this culture.
Yeah.
While there is a board of the IB, like I said, the culture and the values of a place really influence the education that is being imparted.
Yeah. Yeah. What I took away from the rubric versus exam based was like testing skills rather than evaluating skills rather than evaluating like content memorization abilities. I don't know if that's a good way to put
Yeah,
it, but
yeah, and it also changes stress, the relationship with stress, but it also introduces more subjectivity.
yeah.
In terms of then there are more problems around like there I don't know, there is some kind of misunderstanding about what is the meaning of standardization
Mm,
and equity. So, the aim to standardize things is a good aim. It's kind of for equity. Like so people have a similar experience.
yeah.
Whether you're in my class or another class or a third class, as a student, you should have a similar experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they try to standardize because it should be an equal experience. But then I think they default to standardizing the endpoint rather than standardizing the conditions that kind of like create,
Mm. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. What I've seen is teaching has been a predominantly like female field. But have you seen being a female as a challenge or part of your journey? And do you like include it in your like do you identify yourself as a female teacher or a female educator or just an educator?
Yeah, I definitely identify myself as a female as well as a feminist. I would say the gender lens is always alive. Living internationally, the being Indian lens is also always alive,
Yeah,
and that dominates more outside India.
yeah.
Inside India, but like remember that same observation, like all my three heads of school have been male, and in all the schools, like the VPs have been women. But
Mm.
I don't know the stats.
So have you seen like being a woman as a challenge in the field? Have you seen it as, or it's just part of the journey
Never.
or an advantage? No, it's never been a challenge.
I think it would have been a challenge if I went into like engineering. Like I said, like the ratios were so
Mhm.
small.
Yeah,
So then 100% it would have been a challenge. But in the field I'm in right now in education, no, I don't see it as a challenge. I did not see it as a challenge in academic editing and publishing either. And I would not see it as a challenge in science communication. I think it depends on the society
yeah,
because it's to go higher in kind of like your influence, you need to the society needs to allow you to go higher in your influence.
yeah.
So I think in education in itself, it seems okay. I don't know what's happening at the policy level in India. It seems pretty mixed.
It is.
But
That's
yeah,
what I would say too. Yeah.
yeah.
Have you seen science change across the years and how it's being taught?
So, like the most progressive I saw was the NGSS standards.
Yeah.
That's the most progressive that I and I also taught IGCSE in Shanghai, but for like a short amount of time. That was I was doing a maternity cover. And I thought that was interesting in terms of it gave a lot of structure, but I would like to see more change, especially towards the interdisciplinary,
Yeah.
especially towards more project-based learning. Uh, but as long as there is this end mark of exams, there's a that's a big constraint
Yeah.
that at least governs 9, 10, 11, 12. So what I notice in India also from K to 8, there is a lot of interesting innovation happening, lots and lots and lots. And then from grade 9 onwards, kind of schools have to start kind of conforming
The curriculum. Yeah.
to and you actually are working backward from the exam.
Yeah.
That's how it's layered backward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's actually quite unfortunate the way that our systems are in place right now in terms of like,
Yeah, but maker spaces, for example, became interesting. Design
yeah.
thinking became interesting. That's where also STEM and STEAM, there that combination kind of when STEM moved into STEAM and schools that adopted that, that's where like most fun started happening and more
Yeah.
creativity started flowing.
Yeah. It's actually funny that you said project-based learning, specifically that phrasing, because our school does something called PBL, which is project-based learning, and
Yeah,
we have like things that we you are right though, it is still eighth grade, and then we have something called beyond curriculum, which turns into research papers more than
yeah,
projects. But
yeah.
yeah, so we have something similar to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and keeping like some kind of independent research project is a great idea, or even like a collaborative research project, even in 9, 10, 11, 12. That's what a lot of schools do. Like in the IB, it comes already, like they have an I component, which is
Mhm.
20% of the marks. They also have an extended essay component. So if the board doesn't provide the component, I have seen a lot of schools add it on as like an after school kind of slot.
Oh.
You have an independent study research project that you can do. So that's pretty
Mm.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my last question, this is
Yeah.
something that I ask all my guests,
Yeah.
is if you were to say one thing right now to any girl or any student interested in STEM that's listening, what would you have to say?
Yeah. have no fear, and keep an experimental mindset. I would say that's kind of important. I teach a subject now called the systems transformation pathway, and it's going into the complexity thinking space. And there is an approach called safe to fail probes. And it's basically a cycle called probe, sense, and respond. You kind of start poking at things, you poke, and then you see the feedback. And based on the feedback, you kind of like decide your research process. And then based on your research, you decide how you want to respond in your system. And I found that quite a valuable learning for myself these last 2 years. That just, it's a, because you learn different ways of thinking, right, in your life. And I found this as a valuable way of just approach life in this manner, and you should be good.
Yeah. As I
Yeah.
see it, you've already been doing that through your trial and error and all the different fields you've been in. But
Maybe it's validation for me. So that's why I'm like, yeah, it works.
thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed talking to you and I
Yeah,
really enjoyed this
thanks
conversation.
for inviting me also. It's been nice.